NFL expert says that Luther Burden could have a McConkey-level season for the Chicago Bears. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Plus, there's more belief around the NFL that the Chicago Bears may have stole the next great offensive genius in Ben Johnson. Welcome to the party, media. And then lastly, we're going to talk about one player that is suggested the Chicago Bears go after and get that can help solidify their team going forward into the season. We're going to talk about all that and more on today's Chicago Bears Central.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bears Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bears news and content.
What's going on, Bears fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bears Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related. I'm the host there, Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Chi Bears Central on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. And Matt Waldman of the Football Guys talked about Luther Burden and the impact that he could have here for the Chicago Bears. And this should be something that has a lot of Bears fans' ears. He's saying this: what I'm sharing about Luther Burden is also true with Lad McConkey. This is how I began the McConkey article exactly a year ago. I ranked McConkey inside my top 10 based on where I believed he would finish. He remained among my top 15 options throughout the summer. I didn't tell you to draft McConkey this high. Sometimes rankings should tell you how valuable you believe the player is opposed to where they should take them. I'm doing the same with Luther Burden III. I've been bullish on rookie wide receivers developing as starters before. A.J. Brown, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Jaden Waddle, and Chris Olave were all players that I had higher than consensus. I specifically labeled Brown, Jefferson, and Chase and Olave as players with the best team fit among their peers and most likely to deliver strong production immediately. Even Jaden Reed and Jordan Addison were higher on my board than most. Luther Burden has that level of talent, but his skills and fit are misunderstood. Now, there is great question in regards to that, right? And there's a lot of people that go on to think, and Waldman points this out as well, is that Luther Burden may have never been used the best that he could be in college, right? And I think that goes into some of the draft analysis that you had, right? A lot of people through the draft process for Luther Burden had him as a starter level player. But some said, hey, he could be turned into a starter, but his best position may be the slot receiver. And so there are some questions, of course, over if he was drafted and try to be made an outside starting receiver right away, would he be able to thrive in that role? And that is where role plays a huge importance to how successful that you can be in your rookie year. And Lad McConkey, looking at him, for example, right? 16 games played last year, 112 targets, 82 receptions, 1,149 yards last year, average of 14 yards per reception, and 7 touchdowns. Now, I'm not saying that the production level needs to be the same, but if Luther Burden can have that level of impact for the Chicago Bears, because he's going to play a role that is more conducive to the strengths of his skill set. That is what he's going to be playing in his rookie year. He's coming into a situation where he not only has the play caller in Ben Johnson, more on that in a second, but he also has the outside threats in DJ Moore and Rome Odunze, where his job is going to be more streamlined and his role is going to be more just straightforward for himself. And that's where players can really thrive at the next level in the NFL. We got to see if Luther Burden is going to be able to do that. But I do think he's set up in a position and a spot to where it's reasonable to think he's going to be able to do that at a high enough level, right? So, Luther is coming into this situation. Now, he has been injured. He's missed a lot. Ben Johnson's talked about how kind of concerned he is about how much that Luther Burden has already missed throughout his throughout this offseason period so far, the OTAs and the mini camp and stuff like that. But if he's truly healthy and ready to go by the start of training camp, which Ben Johnson has said before that he will be, if that's truly when he's going to be ready to go, I think all things even are going to be pretty fair and pretty straightforward for him. So, that's the hope, at least, is that Luther Burden is going to be ready to go for the Chicago Bears. And if he is, then great, right? Luther is coming into a situation where his skill set, what he brings as that slot, what he brings in his ability to run routes as well as once he gets the ball, what he can do in the open field. These are all things that Ben Johnson, Caleb Williams, and the rest of this wide receiver core are going to really thrive to be able to play off of. And so, we'll see what Luther Burden can do. A lot of people have very high expectations for Luther Burden his rookie year. That's why I made sure to point out it's not about the stats for me. He doesn't need to replicate the stats that Lad McConkey had last year for the Los Angeles Chargers. He doesn't have to replicate that, but the impact there. If Luther Burden in his role can come in and just thrive in that role, that's where things start becoming a little bit different, right? And that's where you start being able to maximize your talent. That's what this Bears team is trying to do. That is what this coaching staff is trying to do. Find a way to just maximize what you have in your players. Ben Johnson's not coming in with the same exact playbook he had in Detroit. He's not doing that. He said that himself, right? He's coming in, he's building the system based off the skill set of the players that he has here. And in that wide receiver core, we have one of the most talented wide receiver cores that the Bears have ever had. And so it's really that Ben Johnson part of that. That could be what brings this all together and makes it make sense for all the wide receivers, everybody, all the skill positions on this team. And of course, it comes down to the Caleb Williams. He's the quarterback. He's the guy that's going to be throwing those passes. So you still need Caleb Williams, especially in the middle of the field, because that is where Luther Burden could very well thrive at, where Caleb has not necessarily been the best at. And I want to, as much as I am a Caleb Williams guy, it's not blind love there. Caleb Williams has to be better at being able to attack the middle of the field. That is absolutely where he needs to grow at as a player. And if he can grow in that this season, that's where you can see a lot of players like Luther Burden and Zacchaeus, is those guys used to the best of their ability. Caleb has to be a better decision maker down the field and in the middle of the field. He has to be more accurate on those. He has to be more confident in his ability to make those throws. If those things come together, Luther Burden's skill, Caleb Williams' growth in those areas, and Ben Johnson's play calling, those are the things that could then make this a special offense, and that goes into making this a special offense this year potentially for the Chicago Bears. So we got to see how all that's going to shake out for the team. But Luther Burden comes in. I think a lot of Bears fans are really excited about what Luther Burden can turn into for the Chicago Bears team. We just got to see if it's going to happen in reality. I hope that it will. And Luther Burden has a lot ahead of him and what he can end up doing here. So let's see that. Let me know down below, though, how you guys feel. Do you think that Luther Burden is going to be able to really thrive this season for the Chicago Bears? Is he going to be able to really step up in that slot role that's not a condensed role, but is a very specialized role that is to his skill set? Do you think he can thrive? Let me know that down below. But with that said, and talking about the offense as well, we got an article from the Chicago Sun-Times. Jason Lassier wrote this. That's why Johnson is here. And the expectations going into the first season with the Bears and the first season ever as a head coach at any level are difficult to pin down. There's rationale to demand a lot and a little and everything in between. Johnson has been the most coveted coaching candidate in the NFL for years, and the Bears were the team to finally lure him from a very good job as the Lions' offensive coordinator. It seems like half the league has chased him. There is a consensus that he's the next offensive genius, and with the roster that's fully built to win now, so he'd better. And here's the great thing, right? We did sign Ben Johnson for what the team can be, right? And what he can do and how he can grow as a head coach at the NFL level. That is part of why we brought Ben Johnson in here. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. That's why Ben Johnson is here. And you're damn real right that Ben Johnson could be one of the next great offensive minds. But you know what tells me something about Ben Johnson as well? That kind of solidifies to me that he could be the next great offensive mind is that he still just didn't rely on just his knowledge, his ability to draw plays. What did he do? He went out and got Declan Doyle, right? A coach that is very extremely young. Hell, he could be the next Ben Johnson. But he went out and got another very creative offensive mind in Declan Doyle to be his offensive coordinator. What then he did, then went in and did. He went and got Eric Bieniemy, another guy who was a very creative offensive mind to be able to come here. And yeah, he's a running backs coach, but best believe in those meetings, in those coaches' meetings, he's going to be putting in his expertise. Ben Johnson went out and surrounded himself with experience and with youth. And for people that know, especially as you start getting older, when you surround yourself with youth, it also helps you kind of stay in touch with what's going on. And that's not to say that Ben Johnson lost touch, but it does bring another guy in who is younger than you, who may have a different perspective. Ben Johnson has surrounded himself with coaches that also can bring in perspective. Now, it's going to ultimately be his design, his decision as somebody who's going to call the offensive plays, but I think that goes a long way, and Ben Johnson is showing how ahead of the game that Ben Johnson is thinking. He's thinking in the sense of, hey, I don't have all the answers. I don't know everything here. I'm still learning as a head coach. And in my abilities as head coach, I'm going to have to focus on everything. So let me surround myself with other really good offensive-minded people. So that way, it's not an echo chamber. It's not just people regurgitating the same things. It's creative people, all with really good offensive mindsets and offensive philosophies that can come in there and help you. And that is where Ben Johnson could thrive at, because he recognizes that. So much of what Ben Johnson has done in the coaching staff and the decisions that he's made on both offense and defense is bringing in coaches that can share a vision, coaches that are just as hungry, coaches that can relate to players. He brought in the defensive version of himself in Dennis Allen, and how creative Dennis Allen is on the defensive side of the ball, as well as bringing experience. Ben Johnson and just his coaching staff hires show so much more focus than what Matt Eberflus ever did, and so much more awareness than what Matt Eberflus ever did. Ben Johnson understands that while it's one band, one sound, those sounds that you have in there, the harmony that you have between those sounds, that's what makes music, and that you have to harmonize. And so it seems like, just from the outset looking in, we got to, of course, see once the season starts what that's going to look like. But from the outside looking in, it seems like Ben Johnson has been very intentional about the people he surrounds himself with. Youth, experience. That's what he surrounded himself with, all over that. And you don't always see that with coaching staff. Matt Eberflus surrounded himself with inexperience and not necessarily youth, right? Ben Johnson did the opposite of that. He surrounded himself with a nice mix of both, as well as former players. And I think that that's another thing that really goes into really good coaches as well. When you bring in those former players that can relate to that, that's an important part of all this as well. So, hearing that Ben Johnson, people are starting to recognize just how creative Ben Johnson is offensively. Like I said at the beginning, welcome to the party, right? And so it seems like we've talked about it. There's so much with Chicago. The Chicago bias is there. When Chicago Bears do things that other teams would have gotten praise for, it's met with doubt because it's the Bears. Now, part of that, I do think, has been the franchises put themselves in that position with the decisions that they've made over the last 20 years. So I can't even, as a Bears fan, be too mad at the media that doubts everything the Bears does first. I do think that it's bias in it, and I can call that bias out. But, I can also have the level of recognition to where I do understand that, yeah, I mean, some of that is true. The Bears have made stupid decisions throughout my whole entire time here. And my whole entire time of being a fan of the Chicago Bears, they have made some very stupid decisions. And I can't knock that at all. If I'm being fair in my evaluation, if I'm being fair in my analysis, I can't be mad at that. But now that the Bears have the opportunity to show and prove, I'm going to be definitely watching the people if the Bears do. And again, that's if the Bears prove it on the football field. How many people then start changing their tune? How many people then start acknowledging the talent that we have here in the Chicago Bears? How many people then start acknowledging, hell, even internally with some of our own Bears fans, Woodstock, I see you, you're an idiot, right? In the comment section. How many of our own Bears fans then start recognizing, hey, the Bears may have actually started changing our direction here? And like I said, I completely understand the trepidation and the doubt that surrounds that, of going into that and seeing that first, right? And you need to see it. Hell, I've said it before. I can't let my excitement become expectation for this team, because every year we've been let down. The Bears have won the offseason again, but can we win in the season? That's one of the biggest questions that I think most fair Bears fans are going to tell you, yeah, is legitimate. The Bears have, quote unquote, won the offseason on paper a lot, but that very rarely has turned into a season where we're looking at it and saying, oh, yeah, it's actually real. And that goes down to some of the things with the Bears, and that goes down with some of the doubt around the Chicago Bears and what just surrounds the city and what surrounds these players in this franchise because of what we've done and what their lack of done, and how we've handled players, how we've handled coaches, how we've handled GMs. Caleb said it the other day. Every other year, you're changing coaches, you're changing quarterbacks, and it's been a cycle. It's been a carousel. Now can we get off of it and start forging a path forward to where this team can actually start winning some football games? That's the question that's here, right? And we'll see what happens in that, man. I hope that we can get to that point. I hope that we can get to the point where we are starting to be respected, but respect is earned. And that's something that I say in my everyday life. Respect is earned. I don't care what you've accomplished in other places or other spots. Respect is earned. And if you don't earn that respect, it's going to get ugly for you. So let's hope that the Bears have an opportunity now where they can start earning some of that respect around this league. And it has to come via how they execute, how they perform. If you're not doing that, it all doesn't matter. So let's see. But talk about disrespect as well. Fox Sports ranked all 32 starting quarterbacks in the NFL, and Caleb Williams landed at 21st on that list. And yeah, when you look at the placement as well, as far as the fellow quarterbacks from the 2024 draft, Caleb Williams ranked 5th in quarterbacks from the 2024 draft behind Jaden Daniels, J.J. McCarthy, Bo Nix, and Drake May. They all came in as ranked ahead of Caleb Williams. What did I just get done talking about? The disrespect. And I get it. It is what it is, right? I understand it. I get it. It is what it is when it comes down to it, right? I will say this, though. For a quarterback that broke the NFL and franchise rookie records in his rookie year, cool. Keep doubting him, right? And like I said, the Chicago bias is there. Doubt him. It's fine. It is what it is. Nobody's mad at you for doubting him. But once he starts proving some of you guys wrong, when he had one of the worst offensive lines in football last year, and again, some of that still was on him holding the ball on for too long. But as Caleb Williams starts to grow, I really can't wait to see how people start looking at him when it comes down to it. Now, in it, they specifically wrote this. Williams remains one of the best young quarterback prospects in the NFL. Now he has one of the best situations in the NFL. Let's see some results. And that part, I can't be mad at that statement at all. Let's see some results. Ending it at that for the Chicago Bears, for any Bears player, for this team overall, I will never be mad at saying, let's see some results, right? Because that is what it all comes down to. You can have all the great potential in the world, but if the results aren't there, people aren't going to believe you. Now, I do think that Caleb Williams had more results in his situation than people are willing to give him credit for, but Caleb Williams has a lot that he needs to prove this year, too. The expectations around Caleb Williams should be high. You know why they should be high? You were drafted number 1 overall, and you are a quarterback of the Chicago Bears, a team that has been dramatically looking for their franchise quarterback for the entirety of the franchise's history. So you have a lot of expectations around you just for that alone. You add in what you have in Ben Johnson, you add in what you have now in weapons, you add in what you have in an improved offensive line, you're damn right the expectations around Caleb Williams should be high. And if they're not high, I got to question why the fuck would they not be, right? So Caleb has a lot that he needs to prove in this second year, and hopefully he's up for the task. Because nothing's coming easy for Caleb Williams. If nothing more got proved last year in his rookie year, it should have been this. Nothing is coming easy for Caleb Williams. All the potential in the world don't matter when you're in those lines across from other players in the NFL and you have a linebacker or a defensive end chasing your ass, right? None of that matters at that point in time. So now Caleb got to go out and show, can he have better poise? Can he have a better decision-making and attack in the middle of the field? Can he not hold on to the ball so long in situations? Sometimes just make the play that's there. Don't wait for the long, big play to develop. Make the play that's there. Attack the middle of the field. These are things that Caleb has to show in year 2 if he wants to be talked about amongst the better quarterbacks in this league. And that's just the results there. That was going to be there regardless, no matter what happened in year 1, that the same expectations were going to be there in year 2. How do you grow year to year? You want to be great. You said that you eventually want to be a quarterback that's judged by Super Bowls. To get there, you have to improve every single year. There's not a single year that you can rest on your laurels. Either you have to improve in an area or you have to have refinement in an area to where and that's also improvement in a way. So this is a every year process when it comes to Caleb Williams. You want to be great in this league. You want to be great with that Chicago Bears uniform on. You have to take this as a badge of honor to improve every single year. And we'll see. And I mean, you have to have a coaching staff as well in the front office that improves the team every single year. And nobody's doubting that, right? So, there are doubts if Ryan Poles is actually going to be locked in to do that. But nobody, I think, doubts it doesn't say that this team needs to improve every single year overall. But I said it multiple times. As a quarterback in the NFL, win losses, that comes down, that is looked at as a quarterback stat, whether you agree with it or disagree with it. That's been the name of the game for as long as it's been around. And now we got to see what the Chicago Bears can do, right? But with that said, there's been one player that has been mentioned over on Clutch Points. The writer there is Enzo Flojo, who writes this. It sounds like a fake name, but nonetheless, I promise you it's a real article. He says, just days away from training camp, there's one more move that could tie it all together and solidify Chicago as a legitimate NFC playoff contender, signing veteran guard Brandon Scherff. Now, we've talked about Scherff before, right? And we talked about him in the offseason when the Bears were revamping the line, 5-time Pro Bowler, and he does set the tone in the trenches, which is a big thing for there, right? And if you can bring him in as a depth guard, because that's what it would be at this point in the season, That goes along. If you can add him as depth for your team, man, that'd be crazy to come down with that, right? Like, and depth is one of the things that people still question on the offensive line for this team is, do the Bears have enough quality depth there? And if you get a guy like Brandon Sheriff in here, I think that goes a long way in doing it. Now, this is kind of a more realistic move. I've said it before, the kind of big name moves of the Chicago Bears, that Bears fans, J.K. Dobbins, all that, it came and went. But I think if you bring a player like this in here to help the protection even further, that's not something that you can really overlook, I think. So, it's an interesting name to float out. We'll see if the Chicago Bears do anything. I think all of that's still going to come down to how confident they are a week into training camp, but we shall see. But that's my time for today, guys. Make sure you guys are following us at Chicago Bears Central. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, chicagobearscentral@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and or voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-242-9336. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related, but that's thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, Chi-Town up, but Bear down. Love you guys. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.